Well, Eskom confirming in the last 2 hours that load shedding will be lifted to stage 5 tomorrow at 5 o'clock, then back to stage 6 tomorrow afternoon. Still no clarity on what Cabinet will decide, meanwhile, about our old coal-fired power stations. Cabinet had taken a decision to shut them down. They're coming to the end of their usable life. However, the Minister for Electricity in the Presidency, Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, has suggested that the plant should be kept going. There's a huge debate about this. Those in favour say it would be madness to switch off technology that works. Other people say it would cost hundreds of billions of rand to refit these power stations. It would be quicker and cheaper and better for the climate, they say, to simply replace that generation capacity with renewable energy. Dr. Roland Ngam is the Programme Manager for Climate Justice and Socio-Ecological Transformation at the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, Southern Africa. Dr. Ngam, good afternoon to you. We have a cabinet policy around coal-fired power stations to shut them down. Then we have the comments by the Minister, Ramokgopa. Do you think Cabinet is going to change its policy over this?
Hi, Stephen, and good afternoon to all the televiewers. I think the Minister Ramokgopa has a very difficult balancing act. He needs to reassure South Africans, and South Africans have been fed a lot of conspiracy theories about President Ramaphosa being bullied by Joe Biden and Emmanuel Macron and the EU. And so he has to try to reassure South Africans that he is working in South Africa's best interest and he is using the cheapest available resources in South Africa to keep the lights on. And so I'm sure that the statement that he made was made in light of all that. And I think the Just Energy Transition Partnership has been signed, and South Africa was a willing party to this partnership, and I think the process is well underway.
We seem to have three ministers in charge of this. I mean, we have Ramokgopa as Minister of Electricity, we have the Minister of Energy, Mantashe, we have the Minister of Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan. Now, some people, you could say, look, if the three of them work together, it shows how important this is. We've got three of the best political brains on it. Other people might say, well, you've got three people in charge, no one's really in charge. How do you see it?
Well, the way I see it is that the Just Energy Transition Partnership is housed at the presidency. President Ramaphosa is directly in charge of this, and he's obviously now project manager, Minister Ramokgopa, is in charge of rolling it out. Also, at the same time, while we talk about these bureaucracies, we should also acknowledge the fact that the private sector, because remember when Secretary Janet Yellen was in South Africa, she indicated that $8.5 billion really was just a drop in the ocean, and that South Africa needs well over $100 billion to finalize its just transition. And so the private sector, IPPs, are installing over 10,000 megawatts of clean energy. The provinces also are coming on board. And so all these things are already underway, and we should take everything that is going on into perspective.
Within all of this, I mean, Dr. Ngam, it's sort of embarrassing in a way. There's the decision to declare a state of national disaster, and then a decision to sort of, you know, not have a state of national disaster anymore, for it to be over. I mean, that can give the impression that maybe government doesn't really know what's going on, or doesn't know what to do, or something.
Well, I think two things. Firstly, IPPs are going to be rolled out by the private sector largely. Eskom really has been sidelined, and this is why many people in South Africa are a bit worried, because all the clean energy is located in private hands, which can be a bad thing. Obviously, the fact that South Africa needs cheap energy for its developmental purposes, but it can also be a good thing. The fact that, yes, Ramokgopa made those statements, but at the same time, it is the private sector that is delivering this project, and it is going to be delivered on time. And so all those things obviously really need to be taken into account, and also the fact that South Africa is going into elections next year. And so everything almost is being done in the context of these elections that are looming large on South Africa.
So you're suggesting that the politics is driving this, not the technical stuff. I mean, many countries have this problem. In a democracy, you have to face voters, and that means that you build according to 5-year projects. You don't build for 20-year projects, which is what electricity really is.
Yes, I am very certain that almost everything that you hear is colored by next year's elections. Minister Ramokgopa already can see that a lot of the 9,000 megawatts are going to be delivered based on the timelines that have been announced before next year's elections. The parts that certain power stations at Eskom have ordered are going to be delivered before next year's elections, and there will be a significant dialing down of load shedding. And I think that is why some people in government are cautiously optimistic about reducing load shedding well in time for the elections. And I think that everything you hear should be weighed in light of the elections that are coming up.
In the meantime, the private sector building a lot more generation capacity. I'm not talking about the independent power producers. I'm talking about what you see on roofs and hospitals, on petrol stations, on private homes. Is that going to make a difference at some point? I mean, we're still on stage 6. We've probably had more investment in solar energy owned by private people and private companies in the last year than ever before. That's got to do something at some point.
Yes, Stephen, to your point, there is a green revolution that is happening in South Africa, a green energy revolution, about 10,000 megawatts worth of IPPs, about 2,000 megawatts announced by the provinces. And I would say we could add to that maybe another 3,000 megawatts already set up by the private sector. We're talking shopping centers, mines, private homes, and so on. About 2 years ago, people were still scoffing at the idea of installing green capacity. Now, nobody's talking about those type of controversies anymore. What happens when the sun doesn't shine and so on. That really has to be celebrated. And although those who cannot afford it really are still relying on Eskom and still very angry about load shedding, we should also acknowledge the fact that many private businesses have already installed their energy, and they have uninterrupted supply almost, and that is really what is still keeping the country afloat.
Dr. Roland and Ngam, thank you very much indeed. Really do appreciate the time, of course, from the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, Program Manager for Climate Justice there. Well, not the last conversation we'll have around electricity, more to come around the investment drive in electricity in a few moments.